welcome to our community activation community call, responding to need, responding to change. I am Iris Yee, head of the regional network for Burning Man Project. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to welcome Christopher Breedlove, head of Burners Without Borders and the director of civic activation for Burning Man Project, to share a little more about why we're gathering today and the series of global activation community calls. Christopher?
Hey, thanks, Iris. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to make this quick, but I just wanted to kind of let you know that this is now the third in an experimental series we're doing around the idea of Burning Man global activation areas. And so we're kind of looking at how there's a whole series of different processes that happen or activities in the world of Burning Man, which includes art, community, events, grant making, civics, and ecosystems. And so we're hosting these community calls as a way to elevate community members who are doing awesome work in these areas, as a way to record the oral history of what's going on in our community as it goes, and then as a way to catalog this as future learnings for people to watch in the future. And so, like I said, this is our third one. We did art activation, we did ecosystem activation, and now this is community activation. And I'm super thankful for Iris, Lara, and Sci-Fi from the regionals team for coming up here and putting this awesome panel together. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Christopher. Again, I'm Iris Yee, head of the regional network for Burning Man Project, and your host for this community call. All of our speakers are part of Burning Man's regional network, which is a network of Burning Man communities in 37 countries, bringing Burning Man ethos into their local communities through events and activities year-round. And what started after the 1996 event in Black Rock City, Nevada, has flourished into a full range of activities, some partnering with their local neighborhood associations, local art commissions, and local governments to bring what they love about burner culture to where they live year-round. So joining me to share how their communities are responding to need, responding to change, and taking their experience from their regional events and the ethos of Burning Man to address local needs, especially during this time and challenges of COVID-19, are Lorraine Tanner from the AfrikaBurn community, and Stephanie Vyborny and Michelle de France of Burning Flipside. And first up, I would love to welcome Stephanie and Michelle. Stephanie has been participating, arting, I love that word, and volunteering at burn events for over 20 years. Currently, she's the art facilitator for Burning Flipside, which is an event and community based in Austin, Texas, and was previously the city planning facilitator. As she tells me, she likes to make things go. Steffi is committed to the idea of servant leadership and really committed to the idea of creating a collaborative environment where people feel welcome and comfortable expressing themselves. Michelle de France is another lead from Burning Flipside, and together they'll be sharing about their project, the Burner Art Safari, which kicked off in Austin, Texas last May. Welcome, we're excited that you can join us.
Thank you, Iris.
Thank you.
So obviously this year was a little hard. We're very excited to have Burning Flipside on Memorial Day weekend, and it became very clear very quickly, late February, early March, that we were not going to have an event this year, and we were real sad. One of the ways that we decided to try to address this was alternative solutions on, what can you do that is participatory, socially distant, safe, and inclusive, and something that we could give back to our local communities. Michelle?
Okay, I think we're on slide 3 now. There we go. This is who we are. This is Steffi. She makes things happen. She instigates, she coordinates, and she brings solutions to people who have problems. And she also figures out how to say yes whenever possible. And then for me, this is Michelle. That's me. Hi. I make spreadsheets and snarky jokes, and I love saying no whenever possible. So together we form boundaries around each other to make things happen and to make things not overwhelm us. Next slide.
So while we were trying to figure out what we were going to be able to do with all of the uncertainty and financial hardship people were struggling with, and this loss of our recharge space, we started having kind of just community-wide conversations. A lot of people were just sad and were needing something else to do.
Next slide. There we go. So Steffi wanted to make sure that everybody got involved. We wanted to make sure that we were finding a way for the community to deal with the not having a burn, with the not getting able to see friends, with not being able to build an effigy, etc. And so she did a couple of community projects prior to what we're going to talk about, and that was a blood drive at our local warehouse, and a food drive with the food bank, so that we could give back our blood, sweat, and food to the community we live in instead of giving it to just our burn community. And so we arranged that so that you could do it with as little contact as possible. And but we're also missing opportunities to share our art. And so this was a thing in the back of our brains that was trying to get us to find a way to be able to express ourselves and to have an outlet for our art. So next slide. So where's the map? If you aren't familiar with the burn community, I believe all of the burns have a tendency to have people wondering, where's the map? And a couple of our friends, Apple and Judge, were basically nagging Steffi for the map because she was in charge of it for so many years. And so she decided to make a map, and we decided to make a map about art in Austin.
It was a fun opportunity to finally do something that we've never been able to do, which is have air conditioning instead of being in Texas and hot enjoying art. Why not make a happy spin? It would be nice to have art from the comfort of your car.
And so I heard about this, and I was helping promote probably on this Facebook post by searching for gifts that were about staying in your car. So that ended up with basically a line attacking a car at some safari at some point in time. And then that's how we came up with Burner Art Safari. Stay in your car, it's dangerous out there, but also go check out art because art is awesome. Next slide. Awkward pause means next slide. So we began the process of inviting people to participate. We had Google Forms, and Steffi yanked all of the art that she had stored in her backyard and moved it to the front. You'll notice that this has a second shark in the front, which is a neighbor's art that was at AfrikaBurn this year. Also Mecha Gator, and both of those shoot fire. The other, I think it's Cranky in the background, doesn't shoot fire.
That is Cranky.
That is Cranky. I got it right. And so we wanted to get people who have art that they can put out there immediately, and also promote creating art for a weekend-long event where we have this map so that people can go out and check it out. It turns out people loved having a purpose and a deadline to get their art done. And so a bunch of people created new art just for the safari, and some people just moved it from the backyard. And then also created new art because they were artists and they do that. So next slide.
So it's impossible to have a burn without things burning. And so a very large group of artists came together and made individual small burnable pieces, whether they were effigies or in this case, meant to be a temple. I think altogether there were probably 10, 11 projects that burned over the course of 3 burn nights. And so, whose project is shown here. And the next slide, Duncan and Kristen, they worked their buns off to make sure that we were all able to get together on Zoom and other tech so that we would have burn nights. This one is also my partner, so I probably have an extra reason to love it. But this project, Thermally Distant, made us all cry, as you would expect. It was really powerful to see a hug because we obviously couldn't do that, and hugging is kind of a huge part of our culture. Next slide. We didn't want to overwhelm people into feeling like they needed to participate. We wanted to open that door and see who walked through. We did a very good job with that. No one was stressed. And people were doing a really good job coming out and keeping the distance that they needed to make sure it was safe. We definitely had some people get a little overexcited and kind of crowd around areas. But for the most part, we did a very, very, very excellent job at staying safe. My understanding is there were no COVID cases due to this project. So good job, guys. Next slide.
Some of the other challenges we faced were considering art in the suburbs. This is an example of an art in a place where there isn't a very strong HOA, if there is one. But some of the things we were talking about, we're concerned about, is whether or not we could actually get people to have art out there, and if they couldn't put it in their place, working with them to find somebody else to host it for them. And so a lot of opportunities to engage in their local neighborhoods to get art in their neighborhood happened, and that was awesome. And then other people helped out other people living in apartments or where they couldn't place out art, had people say, yeah, host it at our house. We're great, we love it. And then obviously all the art was at your own risk. People are putting it in their front yards, and that meant that it could get struck by lightning just because storms came through, people come through and poke at it. And so that was another concern of ours. We didn't have any problems with that, but that was another risk. And then we also wanted to make sure that the artists were able to make sure that only photos that they wanted to happen. So they had to post their own, no photos, please, if they didn't want photos. I don't think that happened very often because I got to see a lot of art and didn't leave my house. Next slide. And so another risk, of course, concern was people getting up and getting in the art and poking at it. Not a lot of people probably wanted to get terribly close to the Murder Hornet by Sirius and Pollyanna. But there's some other more interactive and small, intricate things that people would have to get pretty close to. And so that was a risk. And it turned out also wasn't a problem. We were able to prepare everybody for that, and it worked out well. Next slide.
So there were definitely a lot of things that brought us joy. We Camp always brings us joy at the event, and we were all very, very sad that we weren't going to have a chance to experience it. And I, in fact, got to experience this in the middle of a thunderstorm, so it was perfect. I got to hide under We Camp. Next slide.
This is actually some of the members of a former camp of mine. This is K-Flip created this art. They were also broadcasting the whole weekend, nothing to do with Burner Art Safari, but that was what they did for their art, is they did that as well as put some art out in their front yard. So Steffi and I, we are what I call long-term suckers. We do a lot of volunteering over the past decade or more for Flipside, trying to create a canvas for the art that can happen at the event. We were just overwhelmed by how much there was collaboration and cooperation from all the artists and other community members who jumped on board and try to take it another step in the process, beyond even what I thought. I'm just going to put some points on a map and be done. And they all stepped in and made it even better. And the artists that that brought out their art were awesome. They really stepped up, and it turns out it was all worth all that hard work, even though it was just putting points on a map for me. Next slide.
So another fun burner experience, of course, is gifting. And when you're not together, it's going to be really hard to share your gifts, give people gifts, receive gifts. I was standing outside of my house watching a flame effect do its flamey fabulousness. And a friend walked up to me and handed me this gorgeous magnet of our dear friend Clovis. And I was so excited to actually have that experience. It was nice that we all had a chance to give each other something, including just motivation and a little joy at a kind of hard time. Next slide. The Pyberry was a very, very, very well-received project. Dory and Kate are just generally fabulous humans, obviously also very punny. There was a take a pie, leave a pie aspect, which is also really cool. Everyone enjoyed it. They're also the nicest humans, and throughout the COVID experience, they continually volunteer to make medical professionals meals so that they don't have that extra burden of having to worry about cooking for themselves in this challenging time. So they're pretty fabulous, and the Pyberry is a thing that I hope takes off. Next slide. This project was especially wonderful and sad. We lost a dear friend earlier this year. Thankfully, it was at a time where we could be together to celebrate his life. During the art safari, his wife had reached out to me and asked if, how she could participate. She was very excited that she had a chance to participate. It was healing for us. And it kind of moved it to the next step, where originally this project was supposed to be just for the duration of Flipside. She asked if we could, as she and other artists asked if we could have a map that was just year round and keep us going out and experiencing and doing things. And so thanks to her nudge and some other artists' nudges, we continued the project, and there is still an art map that people can enjoy to this day. And I think there are 5 states participating. The original map did include a point in the UK, Kingdom of Slack, today mini Kingdom of Slack, and that was really fun and really silly, and I was very excited. Next slide.
In addition to art that was just created for this event, we had a lot of art that was created prior to it for the before times. This was actually Mesmer by Erica Raven Van Dorn, who is the lead artist, and Stephen Ward, the engineer. This was actually funded by other Texas burn communities, specifically Mischievia. There were other art projects that were out there that were funded from other burn communities and the Flipside community. This particular one looks different in the day, and at night it changed based on the colors that were being passed across it. And so you can kind of see it transitioning in the blue-green, and then what it looks like in straight up red. If anybody remembers those books when you're a kid, maybe it's just me, that you put the red filter up and looked at the special picture. Anyway, that was this one. And this was only up for weather permitting. Next slide.
One of the projects that was more recently added to the map was Without Trial. It's a database project created by Data IRL. The Without Trial installation uses flags to represent the 1,952 and counting Black people killed by law enforcement officers in America since 2013, which is the year that that data was required to be reported. Each flag bears the name of a person killed before they had their day in court. Over 60 volunteers and counting in the community have worked on this project so far. We really appreciated the diversity of the various projects that participated. I wish there was more time to just be able to share all of them, but obviously we have other things to speak about. Next slide.
And this was an example of something that somebody created for the event that we didn't know was going to happen. Erica of the Mesmer Project created signage that described what was going on and why the art was here, and also allowed people who came across it to join in their own safari by looking at the website or scanning the QR code, so that everybody who wasn't involved can start getting involved. Next slide. And then, because there was no geographical restriction to the Burn Art Safari, anybody could bring it and put stuff on the art. Like we said, there was someone in the UK that was participating. And we want to encourage people, if they want to do this themselves, it's real easy and will help you set up your own. Or if you want to be part of the primary Burner Art Safari map, we can put you all in there, easy peasy. Just contact us on our website, and we do have some ideas where we want to make sure it's inclusive and free as possible for everyone, so that we can all participate and enjoy it.
And one of the things that we were really excited to see is that other burns that are, you know, also now trying to figure out what to do in a world where we can't meet in person. They're starting to get organized and put together art grants to keep artists supported. One is local here that I know of. I know more details about. AfrikaBurn, Texas has opened up art grants for artists inside and outside the burn community. They've emphasized that funding the art will be shown at safaris as well as their next burn. They want to emphasize sustainability and reuse of materials. They want to support art by people of color, and they want to support art that is timely and topical. So that's super exciting.
So if you want to participate, check us out, burnerartsafari.org, and let's go make some magic happen.
We're really excited about people who are excited about this, and thank you so much, especially to all the artists who shared their photos and allowed us to use
and
their
art.
Thank you.
Free mayo, anyone?
That's a classic. For folks who have not been to Black Rock City or other official Burning Man regional events, that's a classic art piece that you might see out on Playa and other regional events. Thank you so much, Michelle and Steffi, for sharing about the Burner Art Safari that kicked off in Austin, Texas. I love that. For folks who don't know, Burning Flipside, which happens near Austin, Texas, is the first official Burning Man regional event. And I love that that all of these art installations, and from the Vyborny, which is my personal favorite, to the Mecha Gator, came out of that community. We have a little time for a bit of one question. I'm curious, you mentioned that the Art Safari has expanded to 5 states. Which states were those?
I should have written that down.
Oh no, I asked you a tough question.
I know New Mexico is included. I know there's a couple of pieces in California at the moment. Michelle,
we have a couple organizations that aren't quite on the map yet, but there's a couple people in, I think it's either Portland or Seattle. I get them confused because I'm not from the Northwest, and I've just insulted everyone up there. And also Victoria in British Columbia, is that right?
I think Jen is in this call, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Or near there.
So there, it could be all over the world, this burner
Absolutely.
map. All right.
Bring it. Make our map whole.
And you mentioned, I'm also curious, like, what happened to all of the art that was placed for the Burner Art Safari that was on people's yards? Is it back in storage? Is it still there? Is it like, what happened to it?
Some of the artists, like I said, went ahead and said, you know, I've got this out. Let's just keep it on the map. Some of it got burned. Those 3 burn nights were very exciting. Some of it was just meant to be temporary, just for the event. I went out of my way not to collect photos for today. Sorry, you don't get to see it. But the temporary nature is, of course, super fun, and I support that. Yeah, what I'm excited about is people are still making things for this project, so that's pretty cool.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you, Michelle and Steffi. Thank you for sharing your story. I love that this project incorporates so much of the burner ethos, from inclusion to creative expression. And of course, being careful about sort of the current state of where we are in the world and being physically distanced. Thank you so much. I'm going to welcome our next featured speaker, Lorraine, who is currently a director of AfrikaBurn. And that's an event and a community based in South Africa and she specifically, for her role with AfrikaBurn, has a focus on development, principally working with the annual event. And in the current climate, she thinks she's best described as executive director of whatever next. She's been involved in inner workings of the event for 5 years, initially working as the outreach and creative development. So co-developing new projects and activities that propel the movement and culture. Lorraine, welcome. Thank you so much for joining and sharing a little bit about the Dignity Project.
Cool. Okay, let me share my screen so we can get going. Okay, so a little bit about AfrikaBurn first. It's an organization which scaffolds or is a skeleton that serves to uphold a participant-led creative community, mostly in South Africa, but we also have participants from neighboring countries as well, which is fantastic. It is the largest regional burn event, and it's the only official one on the African continent at the moment. And I'm just going to move us here. It takes place in the Tankwa Karoo, and that's an arid region. It's about 4 or 5 hours drive northeast of Cape Town. And whilst our time travelers say it's the closest thing to how Burning Man used to be, and this image is actually a couple of years old, it exists and operates and evolves in a very different context to most of the other kind of burn communities. In a country where the majority are marginalized, AfrikaBurn is very proactive about radical inclusion, which is manifest inward towards the annual event through mechanisms such as the Anati program, which provides radically discounted tickets and access grants for participants. And then also outwards with things like Spark grants, which are microfunding, and other interactions and interventions which build community resilience through the application of our guiding principles. And this really creates fertile ground for grassroots civic engagement and support. And it helps people to actualize community projects in their own communities. And this helps propel year-round activities. So we're talking about the Dignity Project today. And that actually started way before COVID hit us. And in South Africa, COVID has largely been a welfare crisis. And then it has subsequently become a health crisis. And unfortunately, COVID has highlighted the failings of service delivery and provision, and it's kind of identified just how wide those cracks are in our society. And so AfrikaBurn as an organization and as a team has been supporting local street residents for quite a while. It's something that they've done in different capacities, and it's mainly been done through the outreach portfolio, through supporting other organizations working in the sector. And outreach also does a lot of different projects, including stuff around the Tankwa community. So working with the community there, with the more vulnerable people and supporting them. And of course, DPW are always willing hands and have a lot of know-how. So they are a key partner in the Dignity Project. So AfrikaBurn grew up in the community of Observatory. It's historically associated with activism, multiculturalism, social change. It's also an area that's grappling with gentrification. And in fact, AfrikaBurn ended up moving to the next area along the next neighborhood called Salt River because our DPW work yard was sold from under us a few years ago. So for the last 5 years, AfrikaBurn has been catalyzing Streetopia, and they've been doing that by activating the local community, the Burn community, and finding financial support to run an event in our local neighborhood, because a lot of the team still live in Observatory and it's still kind of a hub of where activation happens. And so we work on flooding the streets with creativity in order that we can grow a safer street culture. And it has iterations as public art and legacy projects. And this year it's going to become Etopia, because we're going to put it on our Homeburn platform and we're going to take it online. And so by building a community through celebration, we set a good foundation for coming together in crisis. And this has facilitated a strong partnership with Observatory Improvement District, or OBSID, who we've worked with over the years on Streetopia. So August last year, we embarked on the public toilet project, and that was a response to homeless community members using shop fronts, doorways, village green as ablutions, and the situation was really getting out of hand. And we saw that we could intervene to alleviate this problem and restore some sense of dignity. The public toilet project's installation used innovation from the event toilets, which would develop themselves in a response to needing to get clever around alternatives to our long drop toilets, and also around walking the talk, leaving no trace below the surface as well. So we developed a new toilet system with a community member who was an expert, and various AfrikaBurn folk were involved in doing that. And the system basically used a 1,000-litre flow bin. And in this picture here, we've got Christy on the left and Antonia in the middle, sporting her yellow crew shirt, and they are two of DPW's co-leads. So the local municipality and other community organizations thought the design was a good solution, because it has saloon doors and it's got a kind of open top, and that enabled a level of safety that wasn't achievable with porta potties, because porta potties, obviously being enclosed, could be used for drug abuse, or it could cause other issues with people being stuck inside and being unsafe. So yeah, they thought that it provided a level of protection. And then when COVID came to South Africa's shores at the beginning of March, we were less than 2 months to the event. Ironically, our event was supposed to be called AfrikaBurn, and now we laugh on the other side of our faces about that. And we ended up cancelling 2 days before DPW were due to leave for the desert. And our Streetopia community partners, OBSID, saw that with the outbreak of COVID becoming more of an emergency, and one that required additional kind of sanitation facilities, they were concerned about their homeless community. And so they reached out to us and asked us to assist with building wash units that incorporated a water tank, a tap and a basin. And DPW had always been keen to carry on the toilet installation program, given that it had had a reasonable success and that the local councillors had given kind of nods of approval. And obviously at this time, and we were supposed to be doing an event, we had all our usual suspects around us. So we were able to respond immediately and provide some sanitation services in Observatory. And the prototype was developed with another collaborative partner, Maker Station, and fabricated by the DPW crew. And this is Robbie and Amanda. Robbie is our co-founder, and Amanda is from the community organisation OBSID. So the project began during hard lockdown at the end of March, start of April. And OBSID funded the initial construction and installation. And to begin with, our kind of challenges were around navigating permits and sourcing parts and those kinds of things. But we installed the 4 wash stations at strategic points, which you can see there, and the one kind of like middle left and the bottom one towards the right, and then 2 of them on the left-hand side of that bit in the middle. Those are the wash stations, and then the other 2 yellow dots are the original toilets. And what we identified early on, which was also the case with public toilets, is that we need reliable servicing for these. We are able to install them, but we are not able to maintain them on a regular basis. So we had another group of usual suspects, and this is Enviro Wildfire, and they are our trusted fire brigade in the desert, and they assist with our scheduled and unscheduled burns, and under the guidance of the absolutely unflappable Rob Fire, they pulled in to assist, and they initially pumped the water from a local river, and they volunteered their time for the first few weeks. But then as the enormity of the situation progressed, we decided that they needed to tap into the municipal main supply. So they contacted the municipality and got permission to do that. And OBSID then started allocating funding towards a stipend for servicing and covering their fuel and those kinds of things. And for those of you who like stats, they've been tracking their filling, and that's April and May. And there's June and then the first part of July. And this has really helped them to regulate servicing. And it's also been able to build a kind of a framework for this. So if other people are interested in instituting this in their area, they can understand based on the quantities of people using it, how often it needs to be serviced. Specifically with the Dignity Project, vandalism has been a bit of an issue with one of the stations. And that's largely because it didn't have a champion. Although, to be honest, we think that the incidents of vandalism have been fewer than we expected, given that we're in a crisis and people are generally desperate. But local ownership of the stations has been a huge success factor. Another unintended outcome is that people have used the stations to wash their clothes. And this has caused a little bit of damage here and there, but we've managed to modify so that people can still use it as a place to wash their clothes. And whilst the Dignity Project makes use of our typical burner approach, very lo-fi, low-tech, open source and replicable, our biggest challenge remains ensuring that a community partner recipient is willing and able to institute a maintenance plan. So when we've engaged with other organizations, other community groups, that's been at the forefront of our discussions, is like, so what is the plan to own it and make sure that it doesn't become a white elephant. And then here is Celine Dion. This is one of our champions of the wash stations, and being able to formally recognize and serve the homeless community has been the biggest reward, I think, certainly for me as part of this project. And then creating safer street culture, which again harps back to the overarching purpose of Streetopia and its manifestation in awe and celebration, which is echoed here by us coming together in a crisis response shop. And Celine was featured on the national news at the start of lockdown when they ran an article about AfrikaBurn and what we're doing. And it's been really lovely to be able to promote a kind of a different view of AfrikaBurn, because the actual news slot started with a kind of very, very wonderful tracking shot with people who are dancing around and the very kind of typical AfrikaBurn image which gets put out there in the world. But then to have this and to have our crew involved in a very kind of like focused community service project has enabled the rest of South Africa to see a slightly different view. So the project currently services about 120 people every day, and it has done so for the last 4 months. And as the project progresses and as more people get involved, the needs are changing and the project's adapting. So the outlook for this project is moving people into a supported housing model. So that's quite exciting. And then obviously AfrikaBurn support will adapt and change with that, and we will try and institute some fun and creative things to help that along. And what we found is when we embark on such projects, it's really important to be guided by the community's needs and their own proposed solutions, and investigating what's been done already, consulting with the different stakeholders, and identifying what AfrikaBurn brings that is unique to the innovation so that we can build those partnerships. And yeah, this is off the back of the way that outreach actually works in terms of making sure that we do things like stakeholder mapping. We're doing a root cause analysis to work out if we're actually doing the right project to try and address the problem rather than making people an experiment themselves. So AfrikaBurn continues to engage with various people on the Dignity Project. And as I say, we've got a couple of inquiries in the pipeline that we're looking to assist with in the next couple of weeks or so, which is really exciting. And generally, there's still a lot of work to be done. And yeah, that's about it.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. I'm really curious to explore the link between what the AfrikaBurn community does, building, co-creating art and infrastructure annually at the event at AfrikaBurn with the Dignity Project. Like how, like what's the link between like creating like that event and working together and putting a project on the streets of Cape Town?
So it's really around the innovation that we used. We used our toilets that we use at the event, and we had to get clever around that in the desert. So we applied our lateral thinking to supporting a very real issue that was happening in the default. So taking that kind of, that lo-fi approach and that kind of open source approach, and then applying it in the community where there's a need.
Okay, and in an earlier chat, you said something I felt was so striking and so beautiful about, that's worth mentioning here, about sort of coming together in celebration and how.
Oh yes, yeah.
You want to share
So
that?
yeah, I mean, I think it's really important for AfrikaBurn, given that we live in a very kind of like stark context. So the AfrikaBurn event, I often describe as being the photo negative of South African society in terms of its demographics and in terms of its economic strata. And so it's really important for AfrikaBurn to reach out and build trust. And by doing that in celebration first, it really builds for being able to respond in a crisis. And I think I said to you something along the lines of people respond to both shock and awe in similar ways. They kind of rally together. So being able to rally together in celebration is hugely important, as it is rallying together in a crisis.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And I also want to bubble up a question that came from one of the participants who logged in. This person mentioned it's great that you didn't have to do this all alone, that so much of this was a partnership with OBSID. What's your advice for developing partnerships with other like-minded organizations? Could you also like talk about what does OBSID stand for and
So it's the Observatory Improvement District, and in Cape Town we've got quite a lot of these improvement districts in key areas, and they basically have, it's mainly kind of like crime and grime. So they work on improving the area and maintaining the area and working with the different civic organizations in the area. So it would be like the Business Forum, and it would be maybe a heritage group or something like that. So basically, I think the advice would be take your time and do it in increments. And that's what we've done with OBSID, is we've built Streetopia with them over the years, over the last 5 years. And so when they called on us, they knew that we were going to be reliable and that we could deliver. And I think what's really interesting is the comment that we got from Amanda at OBSID is that other community organizations are a little unsure because the toilet's so low tech that they don't believe it will work. They're kind of like, oh, I'm not so sure about this. And so having that relationship means there's a level of trust. And it's around building it slowly and working towards similar objectives, but having something different to bring to the mix.
Okay, excellent. I hope that answers your question. I'm curious, like you mentioned, how did the relationship, I'm curious to dig a little deeper. How did the relationship between OBSID and AfrikaBurn come about? Like, did they reach out to you? Was there like someone who had who lived in that neighborhood?
Well, it's basically, yeah, we've got a lot of the team are residents in the neighborhood. So our co-founders, Monique and Robert, have been involved in different committees on OBSID and obviously have an interest in what's going on in the local area, especially because it's an area that has been affected by gentrification. So there's been a lot of community mobilization over the last couple of years around those issues. So it's really about getting stuck in and getting interested in what's going on in the area and building it from that.
Okay, excellent. So there was a sort of like local personal connection from folks.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, AfrikaBurn used to be based in Observatory for many years and then moved to the neighboring area only very recently. So yeah, it grew up there and it has a lot of kind of like deep roots into that area.
Okay, excellent. If you have, I want to open this portion of the community activation community call to questions for any of our speakers, including Michelle. Michelle and Steffi from Burning Flipside. If you have any questions about their projects as well, this is also a great time to ask them. You can put it in the chat and let us know. I'm curious, and Lorraine or Michelle or Steffi, feel free to answer. Like, what are the sort of like the future plans for your projects? I know Burner Art Safari mentioned that, or you mentioned that the Burner Art Safari is going to keep going on and maybe it'll expand around the world. I'm curious if there are any other sort of like future plans or if there's any sort of for the Dignity Project and others, whether it's expansion or deepening some of these projects.
So for the Dignity Project, it's really around kind of adapting to the new normal and working with the community around their plans. So they have identified a building that they want to use for supportive housing. And so in terms of AfrikaBurn, we would look about how we can rally around that. And it could be painting the inside, painting the rooms so that they are kind of more fun and engaging. It could be around calling out for blankets or soft furnishing, those kind of things. So getting some gifting going around that.
Okay. Steffi or Michelle, do you have anything to add? Because I have also another question.
Obviously, we are working to expand the Burner Art Safari to as many locations as want to get involved, or to help people start their own little subset, depending on what's best for them. And so, check us out, contact us. We'll help you out, Steffi.
Oh, well, I mean, my favorite thing about it really is there's, I have family members that are in their 70s and 80s and will never come to Flipside or Burning Man. And for once I got to share with them kind of what this was all about, everything from the silliness to the seriousness of it. My youngest no longer comes with me, which I wouldn't be able to work if she did. So it was really nice being able to tour around with her and sharing things and talk to my neighbors and kind of explain to them what the Burnerverse is all about. And it was really wonderful just seeing the joy that this project has brought to people, because it's unexpected, it's very silly, and it's a good way to be together when we can't be together.
Okay, excellent. And this question is for both projects, both speakers from both projects. How can people learn to replicate these projects?
In terms of doing something like a Dignity project, it would be finding out what the gaps are and what the needs are and working out kind of like burner innovations or burner inspired innovations to help change that for positive ways. So it would be around making something or providing a service that is desperately needed and being led by that community as to what that need is.
for Art Safari. Probably the easiest way to do that is to talk to your artists and see what they want to do and see if they want to do it. And then making a map is super easy. Google has definitely made it easy for us. You can just click a couple buttons and the map shows up. So I can walk someone through it, or you can Google it. Apparently Google helps.
Okay, excellent. So I see there's a few more questions about specific projects, and I wanted to highlight that we'll have an opportunity to dive a little deeper with each of the speakers from different projects. We're going to separate out into breakout groups. So like those questions will be addressed in that format. But at this time, I want to share my appreciation with Stephanie, Michelle, and Lorraine. Thank you for joining us and sharing out about your projects and what it means to you and its impact. I also want to appreciate you, the folks who logged on, whether it's early morning or evening or the afternoon. Thank you for your participation and your attention. And if you want to learn more about the Burner Art Safari, which started in Austin, Texas, or the Dignity Project, which is based in Cape Town, we are going to, we put some links to more to their websites in the Zoom chat, and we'll also share it in a follow-up email. And if you want to learn more about what's going on in the Burning Man Regional Network, you're welcome to log on to regionals.burningman.org. You can also share more about your projects by reaching out to my team, which is the regional network team at Burning Man, by emailing regional-network@burningman.org. Our partners at Burners Without Borders also host bi-weekly calls on Wednesdays for folks to share out about projects that they are developing in response to COVID and other local challenges and nationwide and beyond challenges. And we'll share more about information about those calls too. And of course, please join us for future global activation calls. There'll be more information posted via Kindling. Thank you so much.